Hello, and welcome to AWS Transformation Day in Munich. My name is Constantin Gonzalez. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect, and thank you for picking this talk as your next talk here. I'm always very amazed by how much stuff there is in these summits and transformation days, so many partners, so many breakout sessions, so many customers sharing their information. And actually, this talk started with a customer. So the customer, in this case, came to us and asked us, oh, you're Amazon, right? And we're always very happy to see so much innovation coming out of Amazon. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do on an organizational level to do that? And we said, sure. And then the other thing, customers told us, yeah, but wait a minute, we don't want yet another innovation pitch. We really want to understand how do you craft your innovation around the customer experience? Because we know that at Amazon, you really care about the customer, and we want to learn from that. We want to learn how to be truly customer-centric and not just on paper. And that's the beginning of this talk. So this is why I put together this talk for a customer, and now I get to share it with you. So this talk is about innovating on behalf of customers, and it could be your customer. So feel free to borrow any of the things I'm going to share for your own innovation process, for your own development process, and for your own organization. So we're going to discuss today's rapidly moving, disruptive world. We're going to discuss how the innovation process works and what you can do to create a better innovation process for your own company. We are going to talk a lot about customer obsession and about truly understanding what the customer experience is all about. And this will boil down to culture and mechanisms a lot, so we're going to cover that. And to finish this off, we are going to share some examples from our customers, Siemens and Otto, and other customers that are within the Amazon world, so some of Amazon's experience that I'm going to share with you. Just to give it some context, and I've shown these slides a couple of times, so 15 years is the average lifespan of an S&P 500 company, more or less today, right? I actually have to look up the newest number because that number goes down very quickly. So what do you think was that number about 100 years ago? What was the average lifespan of an S&P 500 company in the 1920s? 50. I'm hearing 50. Well, you're close, but not enough. It was actually 67 years. Now, you don't have to panic because your company may be older than 15 years. So how many people are working for a company that's older than 15 years? Okay? There's no reason to panic. I'm not telling you this so that you think you're in a too old of a company. No, of course. There is a reason why your company is older than 15 years and still here, right? So that's a good thing, right? But the thing I want to say is the world is changing, and the world is changing faster. So it's the pace of innovation that is accelerating, and we need to learn how to deal with this as companies on an organizational level. So here are some companies that are younger than 15 years, presumably. I actually went on vacation with Airbnb. It was a great customer experience. I loved it. And these companies typically are associated with something that's called digitization. And I agree, digitization is a buzzword, right? Everybody talks about digitization. Just open any magazine and then they'll sell you anything under the label of digitization. And as a computer scientist, I really like to understand what am I looking at? What is this digitization thing here? And over time, as I analyzed a lot of digitization customer stories and examples, it actually boils down to a very, very simple formula. Digitization is creating value out of data. That's all there is to it. If I book my next vacation room with Airbnb, it's Airbnb that is collecting data from all the houses and the apartments and the rooms that are available, and they're bringing it together with the data from all of the people who want to spend some vacation somewhere. They're connecting data with each other, and they are creating value out of the data that they collect. If I drive a BMW and the BMW collects data from the road signs on the road and uses that data to enhance the mapping of the navigation system, that is the car collecting data and creating value in the cloud out of that data, and that value can be monetized, it can be sold, and this is what actually customers buy, right? Your customer doesn't buy a gadget, they don't want to buy a service, they want to buy a value. They They open their wallets and they give you money because they see value in your product. So why is everybody talking about customers now? I mean, at Amazon, we are customer obsessed. We are talking about customers since more than 20 years now. But why is everybody else now talking suddenly about the customer? What is the change in the marketplace that is forcing us literally to think about the customer in a new way? And the reason is simple. It's because in a digital world, the switching costs are near zero. If I don't like a specific digital service, it's very easy for me to switch to a different digital service. I just install another app, sign up for a new service that promises me or delivers a better customer experience. So there is no way to lock in customers in today's digital world by selling them a gadget or hooking them up into a 24-month contract or anything like that. You can only retain customers if you really make them happy by delivering them to something that they truly value. That's the only way. There is no shortcut anymore. There are no guarantees. Your customer is going to stay because they love you. And they're going to go away if you don't deliver a true value to them. So it is a good question to ask, what do customers want, right? So you probably have a marketing department that is trying to answer this question. That answer may not always be true. I mean, you probably know this quote here. People say it's from Henry Ford. I actually tried to look up the original author of this particular quote, and I didn't find a 100% accurate attribution to Henry Ford. But again, it's a good quote, and it reflects my own customer experience. Customers are great when it's time to complain. Wonderful complainers. They tell you what's wrong all the time, and it's very useful input. But then you try to, okay, so what do you want? Well, actually, and then you get something like a faster horse. So you need to do a lot more research here and ask the question, so what do customers really need? And here's another quote, and this time I found the true author of the quote, and that quote goes like this. People don't want to buy that quarter-inch drill. They are not interested in your tools or your services. What they really want is the quarter-inch hole. And that brings us one step closer to the real value that your customer wants from you, right? And if you want to go down that hole, sorry for the pun, if you want to go dive deeper into what customers really value and want, I suggest to read a book that I recently read by Clayton Christensen. So those of you who have been longer with IT, they may know Clayton Christensen. He's a Harvard professor, by the way, from The Innovator's Dilemma. So he used to write a lot of books around why companies fail to innovate. And then people told him, yeah, Clayton, this is nice. Now we all know how people fail, but we don't want to fail. We want to succeed. We want to be successful, right? Do you have something about how companies can become more successful? And that's why he wrote this book here. How do you compete? How do you innovate without relying on luck? And he came up with this wonderful quote. Customers don't buy your product. They don't buy your service. They hire your product or service to fulfill a specific job for them, right? So you're all now in the outsourcing business. You all are selling something to your customers that is helping them get something done, a job done. And by understanding what your customer want to get done, this is typically stuff that's difficult or not very pleasant or any other thing that's on your mind of your customers. If you understand that, you're going to be really successful and be able to innovate with new services and new products that really fit what your customers value. And that's the next piece of the equation. Of course, it's not just about something that customers want or need. At the end of the day, they do have to pull out their wallets, fork out the credit card, and give you some good old cash that you can earn, right? And so how do you measure that? How do you make sure that this turns into something that you can put into your business model? And the Amazon business model is pretty easy. We call it the Amazon flywheel, and it comes with two circles. So the inner circle starts always with the customer experience. If the customer experience on the Amazon store is a good one, they tell each other, hey, go to Amazon, this is a great website, and that increases our traffic. Now, if we see more traffic, we can go back to our sellers and say, hey, we have this great platform, lots of customers, don't you want to sell on this platform? And that helps us get more sellers onto the Amazon platform. Now, when we get more sellers on the Amazon platform, we get a better selection, more stuff you can buy on Amazon, and a better selection increases customer experience. So customers go to Amazon because they see great selection, and that is a flywheel, right? It turns faster and faster and faster and reinforces itself. There's a second flywheel because as we grow, we get to build better infrastructure, right? If we get to build better infrastructure, we can have lower prices, and lower prices are always good for customer experience, and that fuels this flywheel even more. So it all boils down to these three things that Amazon customers at least value. It's price, everybody wants good prices. Selection, everybody wants choice, right? And convenience, everybody wants their package to be delivered at their doorstep in a day or less, right? Now, you might say, okay, that's fine for a retail business like Amazon, but I'm in a digital business, or I'm in automotive, or maybe you're in medicine, or in some other business. It doesn't necessarily apply to IT, does it, right? It turns out we did exactly the same for AWS. We just took these three things and we applied them to IT. If you look at AWS, this is a similar flywheel that works for AWS pretty well. And as AWS grows, we get to enjoy a bigger ecosystem, bigger global footprint, and new services and new features, which helps get us more AWS users due to nice and friendly customers who like our platform, and we get to deliver more infrastructure platforms. So the pricing thing also works in IT, I can tell you that. And we were able to deliver 67 price reductions. Actually, when I was on vacation, I had the 67th price reduction, which is Amazon Lightsail. My wife uses Lightsail for her WordPress blog, and I said, damn, I need to rework those slides. Anyway. The other thing is selection, right? Again, 125 services and more, great selection, people love that, and convenience. I mean, bringing IT to the point of going to a website, clicking on a button, and then you get your server up and running, or your machine learning service, or your data warehouse, or any other stuff that used to be difficult, that's convenience. So think of these three things, price, selection, convenience, in the terms of your own product or service. They may help too. Now let's get back to the value creation process. We talked about what customers buy, which is the value that you deliver, right? Now, in a digital world, the stuff that you use to deliver is data, right? This is your Rohmasse, as we say in German. This is your basic mass. Instead of using metal and creating cars or motors, you use data, and then you create value services out of that. And that is the core of your service. You should definitely own your data. You should do everything possible that it is your data, that you have control over, that you understand your data. I was recently talking to an analyst, and the analyst told me about customers who are outsourcing their data lake to some company somewhere else, and that is definitely not going to help you retain control over your most important digital assets. So make sure you own and you control your data, and go build those data lakes. And that is the reason why everybody is now talking about data lakes, right? Do you have a data lake project in your company? If you don't, hurry up. Go visit a data lake website on our homepage. A data lake is very easy to understand. It simply means cleaning up your data act, getting your act together on data. Instead of having 20,000 different databases and everybody's doing something with them, try to get a full view, overall centralized view of your data, introduce data governance so that you control the data, and then you can start creating value from it. So the middle arrow, the process by which you create value out of data, this is what you must build. And the key thing about building is you cannot outsource that. Remember that company that was about to outsource their data lake to some outsourcing company, and then they lost control over it? You don't want to happen that to your value creation process, do you? You don't want to bring the crown jewels to some company and then they run away with it. You want to keep control over your crown jewels, and that means you need to become a builder. And that's the reason why we run these conferences under a building theme. That's the reason why we give you building blocks. That's the reason why we talk about blueprints on how to build stuff that creates value out of data. So let's talk a little bit, how do you build something that companies value? And that brings us to the topic of digital innovation, or more precisely, innovation in general. Now, the first step in innovation, and that worked for the last couple of hundred years, it's always the same. You start with an idea, and then you build a product, right? Very easy. And that product, in the past, was something super complex, and it took you years to create that product. You went into your ivory tower, and you closed yourself up with lots of very bright people, and everybody knew exactly what you want to build. And after 3 years, you came out with a product, and then your sales force goes, hey, I have this great new product. Do you have a problem for my product? I want to sell this now. That doesn't work anymore. And this is why even large companies are now adopting the concept of a minimum viable product. And here's the definition from Wikipedia, and I highlighted the keyword out of that definition. The purpose of a minimum viable product is not to make money fast or something like that. It's not to come out to market faster. The purpose of a minimum viable product is to provide you with feedback and validation that the idea indeed is valid, right? It is a test. You have a great idea? Fine. Show me how it's generating value by bringing this idea in front of customers as quickly as possible and getting real feedback from what customers did by forking out their credit card or by leaving you 5-star reviews or whatever, so that you actually get real validation that the idea is a good one. And then you can measure. Instead of going to the street and having people fill out forms about, do you like my product? You can embed analytics into your product, right? You can use mobile analytics or web analytics to figure out what are people doing with my product. Are they adopting it? Are they using it? Are they using it the way I want it? You create data from your running product, you measure data, and then you collect that data to learn from it. So measuring and metrics and monitoring are really important here. We have a couple of partners out there who can help you with that. Or you can simply use the basic measuring services that we provide in the form of CloudWatch. Collecting metrics is key to understanding your business. And it's not just 3 or 4 sales metrics, as many metrics that are significant as you have. To give you an example, at AWS, our service teams, they have weekly ops metrics meetings. And each service team has a scorecard with the most important metrics that are tracked all the time. They're always visible to everybody in their service organization. And that graph has a line that tells our service teams if their service is behaving the way they want it, right? And the thing is, if the metric breaches that line, if it crosses over the good line, then the service team has a bug. They need to fix that. It's that easy, very easy. You select metrics, you track those metrics. If the metrics don't look right and you can specify your minimum or maximum value, then you file a ticket. You can make this completely fully automatic. Metric touches the line, ticket is created, some engineer needs to diagnose the problem. And that's how our service teams operate. They collect as many metrics as possible that can tell them if their customers are happy. So it's important to collect good metrics. So don't spend too much time on vanity metrics. So vanity metrics are page hits on my website. I run a blog, I can give you millions of page hits, but that doesn't tell you if anybody's reading my content, right? So what you want to collect are meaningful metrics that accurately describe if your customer is really happy. Latency is a great metric to track, to know if your customer is happy in a web-based environment. It could be something else. It could be number of transactions, because that's every transaction is a cha-ching, I'm making money, so you want to track number of transactions per second. So that's a good metric. So try to understand what are the metrics that accurately describe your customer experience. And if your customer tells you, hey, your service really sucks, then try to understand the suckage out of metrics. And if you don't have a metric that can tell you if you suck or not, then you need to invent a new metric that is accurately able to tell you if your service is really good in regard to that specific customer feedback. So even though you are tracking all those metrics, and even though people think that companies like Amazon are data-driven companies, never forget your customer. And actually, Jeff Bezos said, the thing that he learned over time is when anecdotes and the data disagree, usually the anecdotes are right. So pay attention to what your customers are telling you in the comments, when you interview them, when you talk to them, and then use that to find the right metrics for your job. So you collect all that data because you want to learn, right? That is what's closing the circle here. You learn from the data that you collect from your running service, that you collect from customers, and you can use those learnings to generate new ideas. And sometimes learning is hard, and sometimes learning can be painful. And that happens if something goes wrong, right? So stuff goes wrong all the time. The key thing here is, how do you deal with stuff that goes wrong? Of course, the first thing is firefighting, right? You fight the fire, you patch it, you're glad it's over, and then you move on. That's a big mistake, because you haven't learned from your mistakes yet. So introduce a process into your innovation system or your organization, whatever, some process that helps you learn out of every mistake, ideally with a goal that every mistake is only done once. At Amazon, we have this process called the cause of error reports, or COE reports. Here's the things that go into that report. And you will notice that the key thing here is these reports are non-blaming reports. They don't tell who went wrong. It's not saying, I'm seeing Eric here. The report doesn't start with Eric screwed up by not installing the hard disk properly or something like that. That doesn't show up in the report. It says something like an engineer did not install yada yada, and then everything went wrong. It's not the goal to blame someone. The goal is to learn from your mistakes and to have a mechanism that is guaranteed to extract learnings out of every major failure. And then you can create an action item as a result of that report, a new feature request or a bug report or whatever, that documents your learning. And then you can use that to fix your service, or ideally create a test that replicates the error condition so that every future version of your service will run against those tests, and then you will see if it's repeating that error or if it's still resilient against that kind of errors. And if you're having trouble finding out, so what is the root cause of your problem, and sometimes those problems can be really elusive, there's a technique that we borrowed from Toyota called 5 Whys. And that 5 Whys technique is pretty easy. My 3-year-old daughter could do that. She's just asking why. Actually, my daughter is 8 years old, and she did that game. She played that game yesterday evening. She said, "Hey, Daddy, why is a giraffe called a giraffe?" Because that's the name that the scientists came up with as they saw that animal for the first time. So why did they choose that name? And then after 5 iterations, I was done. I mean, shut up, I don't want to talk about giraffes anymore. Ask why as many times as possible until you get down to the root cause of your problem. The first couple of answers are going to be technical answers, because the hard disk wasn't mirrored, because the database couldn't connect to the application server, because. After you follow the chain of whys, you will end up at a place where there is a missing component, a missing process, or something non-technical that is at the root cause of that why, and that gives you a pointer towards a solution. Because now you know, okay, we don't have backups. Okay, bummer, okay. That was a simple example, but sometimes you're missing a key metric that can give you an early warning about an overloaded condition so that you can scale properly or something like that. That is something you want to build into your system, and that is where the 5 Whys can help you identify that. So now we close this circle, and then we start from scratch. We generate ideas from what we learned, and the next thing is try to measure the time that it takes to walk through that cycle. How much time does it take for an idea in your organization to go from idea to product, to touching customers, to collecting feedback from customers, and then learning from that feedback and feeding that back into your idea creation process? How much is it? Is it years? Is it months? Is it weeks? Try to make this into a new KPI for your management. We call it time to revenue. How much does it take from an idea to be generating revenue out of that idea? Great business metric. And then you need to figure out how to make that circle faster. That is the key thing here. So how do we make this thing faster? Now, if you talk to any IT vendor, of course, they will tell you, okay, you got to do digital transformation, and the magic is in technology. to a certain extent, they are right. I mean, microservices are there for a reason. The reason we like microservices is they help you split up the monolith, and then you can automate everything, and then you can introduce changes very, very quickly because you don't have to redeploy the full monolith. You just deploy microservices, and each of these has independent, all of that technical stuff. It is completely true, yes, but there is another ingredient, and that is really people. This is why you are not going to lose jobs anytime soon, because it's still important that you do your job to help get this innovation thing going. So actually, I would say that people are more important than technology in order to have a real digital transformation and a good innovation process. So let's talk about what we can do on an organizational level to help with innovation, or actually try to fix some of the things that crept in over the past that are not helping right now. And one thing customers tell us is that in our organization, decisions take too long. So who has heard this before? I hear this with customers all the time. Hey, Constantin, this is great that you're talking about microservices. It'll take us years to decide how to use microservices and to introduce this new pipeline you're talking about. And it'll never happen because decisions take too long in my company. And the reason decisions take long is because we have hierarchies and because we always rely on hierarchy to get anything done, right? The girl at the bottom, she has a really good idea. She wants to introduce a new CI/CD pipeline that would enable her to realize a change in their IT system in seconds instead of days or something like that. So she talks to it about her manager at the weekly one-to-one. And the manager said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let me discuss this with my manager. And then another week goes by and he talks to his manager. And then she talks to the director. And then it goes all the way up to somebody who actually has the power to decide something. And that person apparently has another good idea. Let's refactor our CI/CD pipeline. I heard that during the last meeting. Sounds like a good idea. And then the whole thing goes back down the chain until it gets implemented. And months have passed because those director meetings, they don't happen weekly. They happen quarterly or something like that. So at Amazon, we asked, how can we shortcut the decision-making process so that those decisions happen a lot quicker? And one way we do that is by introducing Amazon leadership principles. It doesn't mean that you have to copy those Amazon leadership principles. They are public, by the way. But the key thing here is those principles are a key mechanism for us to enable our employees to reach their own decisions. You don't have to take photos. You will get a copy of the slides anyway. So our employees, they take the leadership principles, and then they know how to decide stuff. Okay, it says bias for action. Let's try out if the CI/CD thing worked. And 1 week later, okay, it worked. So let's invent and simplify. Let's push this back. And all of these leadership principles help our employees reach decisions without asking their managers all the time. So that's a great thing. It pushes down the responsibility and the decision-making capabilities down to the employee base. And now our leadership teams, they have free time to think about the truly strategic long-term stuff. They don't have to approve the minutiae every day. They can think about the really important long-term stuff. So it's a win-win for all in this situation. The other things my customers always tell me is, yeah, but we're a very bureaucratic organization. I have weekly meetings, I have daily meetings, I have my stand-ins, and then I have these reports to write, and we need to do these PowerPoint presentations all the time. I don't get to code a lot. I have to outsource my coding because I'm caught up in so many meetings. And that is because our organizations are shaped more or less like this. You have all your business units, your vertical business units lined up that are trying to do business, right? And then you have some horizontal functions like IT and finance and marketing and stuff like that. And you're working with partners and contractors and other people there. And it's all great and good. The thing here is you need to understand your organization like a system. I mean, you are engineers most of the time, or you're managers with an engineering background. You know how systems work. You can fix your cars, you can fix your computers, you can fix your software. So try to fix your organization by identifying what are the bottlenecks in the organization. And one thing about organizations is, since we are all human, we still think of our teams and of our teammates as buddies of our own tribe, of our own family. I mean, your team feels like a family. I mean, you're spending 8 hours a day with the same people all around you. Of course, you're on a first-name basis, and of course, you're going to help out each other. I mean, hey, Luca, can you help me with this CI/CD pipe? Sure, Constantin, I'll do that for you because you're my buddy. We're in the same team. We love each other. So within the same team, everything is always, most of the time, it's fine, right? Problem comes between those teams. Just like back then in the old Paleolithic area when we were crossing the savannah in our tribes, the other guys over there, be suspicious. They could be stealing our food. They could be stealing our camping site. Don't go to the legal department. They're going to kill your project. Oh, don't work together with these. They always screw up. Don't do that, right? So it's a very natural emotion to be suspicious of other groups of people. This is deeply ingrained in our psyche. And that's why we have processes. Processes are things that help your team protect itself from other teams. That's why you have to cut a ticket before you get something done with the other team, so they can document that they did their homework and that they didn't screw up and that it's really your fault because you cut the wrong ticket and all that stuff, right? And now we are trying to get a digital project done in this environment. We are trying to get all of these departments to work on the same project. So who is the owner here? I mean, who's the real owner of a project if you have like half a dozen departments on the same table? And that's the reason we have this thing called a project manager, who is actually there to help those teams work together, even though those people belong to different teams. And that's why we have project management meetings, conf calls, slides, documents, all of that stuff that doesn't really add value to our service or our product and creates a lot of overhead and eats a lot of time. So at Amazon, we thought, okay, how can we turn this around? How can we leverage the human nature to its fullest? And how can we get rid of the stuff that doesn't help us create code? Actually, we have internal surveys among employees asking, how much time do you spend coding versus meetings? It's really a KPI with our management to help our employees not spend too much time in those meetings, because we know they are more productive writing code. And you all know how hard it is to hire good engineers. You want them to write code and not attend meetings, right? So this is why we have those 2 pizza teams. You may have heard of 2 pizza teams that we can feed with 2 pizzas, American pizza. So it's 6 to 8 people. That's a good team size. And the reason is, if the team size is around 6 to 8 people, there's not a lot of overhead. There's not a lot of communication overhead. Everybody knows everybody else on the first name. I always have trouble remembering names, but I can remember the names of my 8 teammates just fine. And then everybody can really help each other, and that's great. And the other thing is, those 8 people owning that service, they have full autonomy. They can do whatever it takes to get their service up and running. So this includes developers, it includes operations people, it includes business managers. Everybody needed to get that service running for its entire life cycle, even if it's decades, is in the same team. So they always work together by default. There are no processes, tickets to cut just to get somebody from your own team to help you with it. And that's how we accelerate our organizations. If you put people into the same team, in the same location, in the same office, they are going to work together. It's human nature. There are not going to be a lot of siloing, fences preventing you from doing this. And that's how we get acceleration on an organizational level. And that means we don't need a lot of project managers here, but we do need product managers. A product manager is a product owner. She or he owns the service and creates the roadmap, talks to the other teams as if they were customers, because they are customers, and creates a customer-centric roadmap for the service team to execute on. Just to give you some numbers, we have thousands of teams. We're using microservices, continuous delivery, great things in multiple environments, and we can deliver 64 million deployments a year just for Amazon.com as a homepage alone. So when you click on Amazon.com, and you hit reload, two things have changed on that homepage somewhere in real time, very, very reliably, and people behind it are innovating like crazy at a very fast pace, at the pace of seconds. So remember, it's not just a technical thing. You need to have somebody from business owning that team. You need development and operations people. That's the reason why DevOps is big. So we like lean business principles, minimum viable product, get feedback early, iterate fast on the business level. We like agile methods to bring that business roadmap, codify into software that creates value out of data, remember? And then we like DevOps to make it all work in production within the same team. And that's what makes this circle fast. So finally, if you tell this to your manager, they will tell you, yeah, but what if they make mistakes? If you give them those leadership principles, they don't have to run for approval. And if you give them those autonomous teams, they might end up doing something wrong. And that's going to be catastrophe. So yeah, we know that stuff can go wrong. But the thing here is, whenever you reach a decision, we found that there are two types of decisions. One type of decision is what we call a two-way door, a door where you can walk through it. And if you don't like what you're seeing, you can walk back. Not a big harm done, right? So a two-way door is a door that you can enter or exit at any time, where the decision doesn't really create a lot of damage if it turned out to be the wrong decision. This is what experiments are all about. Are we sure we can load this database with 1 million transactions per second? Okay, let's try it out in an experiment. And 1 week later, yeah, we did the experiment. We loaded it with 1 million transactions. It still works. It works. Let's go for that door, right? Very easy to implement. Not a lot of risk. You do that in the cloud, of course, so that you only spend like $500 in running your experiment in the cloud, and then you know if it works or not. So the biggest harm would be 1 week and $500, and I think that's okay as an innovation budget. And then you know what the true answer is, and then you can go through that door confidently because you have done there and you always had the way to go back. The other kind of decisions are those that I painted here, yellow door decisions. Decisions that may have a really big impact. They may touch 1 million customers. They may cost you $1 million. They may be hard to take back. These are the decisions that you better dive deep on and go to your ivory tower. Ivory towers are there for a reason, just not for every reason. So these are a good place to invest in those ivory towers and come back with a really good analysis, and then you reach that decision very well informed. But what we found at Amazon is that more than 80% of all decisions are of the two-door variety that you can take back. It's only a very small amount of decisions that really warrant that hard analysis phase. And this is why Andy Jassy likes to say, invention or innovation requires two things. The ability to run a lot of experiments quickly, and that's what the cloud gives you, and the ability to live with the collateral damage. And in the cloud, the collateral damage is very small. It's just pay-per-use. And then you can innovate crazy by trying out and see what sticks. So finally, the other thing we do to help avoid making mistakes is a thing called mechanisms. And you heard me mention the word mechanism a couple of times already. And the thing is that everybody wakes up in the morning and wants to do the right thing, right? I hope that nobody woke up in the morning saying, today I'm going to screw up this project really bad because I like it, right? That's not going to happen, right? And still stuff goes wrong all the time. So why? And the thing is that good intentions alone don't work. Everybody has good intention. Everybody wants to do the right thing. What we need here are mechanisms, are things that help our employees follow through on those good intentions on a day-to-day basis. Processes that really help them do the stuff they want to do easily. And one such mechanism is our PR FAQ process. That means if a product manager has a new idea for a new Amazon or AWS service or product, the first thing they need to do is they need to write a press release. They need to write down in the words of the customer what this service is about. And that forces the product manager to think like a customer and to put themselves into the customer's shoes and have a truly customer-centric view at their new product. And then they need to write the FAQ with all of the hard questions and all of that stuff that you want to answer before you sell that product to customers. And then you write the user manual to get a feel about how is this going to be used, how does the API feel, is the API right? And then we start building and coding and doing the implementation stuff. It's a very simple mechanism. We simply tell everybody, did you do your PR FAQ yet? No. Go back and come back when you have your PR FAQ document, and then we talk about funding and coding and all that other stuff. Because then we know we are developing with the customer in mind from the very beginning. The other thing we use as a mechanism is narratives. So I'm showing a lot of slides here, and the slides I'm showing here are because they help me tell a story. And that's fine. That's a good use of slides. A narrative is defined as not being slides. It's actually a 6-page document that we use as part of our management decision-making process. So in a management meeting, slides are forbidden. Instead, whoever wants to get a decision done needs to write a 6-page maximum narrative. Could be 1 page, 2 page, or 6 pages. And that is read at the beginning of meetings. So an Amazon meeting can be really peculiar because you're sitting in a meeting and everybody's reading and nobody's talking for 20 minutes. But the good thing about a narrative is after those 20 minutes of reading, everybody's on the same page, literally. And the reason is, since you are forced to write down your ideas, you are forced to refine your thoughts, to think it really through, not just blast out some comment and then stuff goes wrong or whatever. So you're refining your thoughts, you're articulating them effectively so that everybody understands what you mean by saying that. You can back it up with data, and you're avoiding those mistakes and key gaps that people will call you on, and then it's going to be an embarrassing moment. So let's take an example. So here's a typical management decision situation. We want to brief people to do the right thing and win the stuff for us. Imagine that situation using a PowerPoint slide. I mean, do you think it would have gone well? Do you think people know exactly what's happening? And the reason is we are not all master PowerPoint designers. Actually, PowerPoint is a great way to hide the flaws in your ideas and the embarrassing stuff that you didn't think through yet. And that is actually what happened in real life. So this is a page of the analysis document of one of the space shuttle crashes. And one of the key reasons why the space shuttle crashed in this instance, and this is highlighted in the document, is the excessive use of PowerPoint in decision-making processes, which hid flaws in the engineering thing. And they specifically said if people took the time to write documents and write it down and go through that document, they would have uncovered the flaw that made the space shuttle explode. More mechanisms. I talked about the COE reports. When we hire people, we have a mechanism to make sure we only hire really good people. And the ops metrics meetings are another mechanism. So we are now seeing customers adopting these things in their own processes now. And one example is Siemens. I just came out of a talk with Siemens on the other room over there. And Siemens re-implemented MindSphere in the record time frame of just 8 months. From the first meeting to first customer on MindSphere. That's a breathtaking fast time for a complex thing like MindSphere. And then they went to a customer in Mexico, the Siemens Monterrey plant, and implemented MindSphere there. And in just 8 weeks, they saw a big increase in their efficiency. And then they talked to another Siemens customer called Hamlet, who produces valves for industrial use. And they attached a microphone to that valve and used the data coming from the microphone to feed a machine learning system. And in a couple of weeks, they were able to predict when that valve is going to be failing and when to replace the thing. And Otto did the same. Otto is here on stage as well. And they re-implemented their innovation process using those principles I outlined to you. And now they are super fast in developing new Otto services. So now it's your turn. I would like to invite you to see your organization as a system. Identify the bottlenecks. Identify your principles. See what works and what doesn't and what you can adopt from other companies, not necessarily Amazon. I have customers who visited Zalando to learn from them. Run your first innovation meeting. Build your first 2 pizza team and take it from there and start building something with small autonomous teams. And since we like to sell books as well, here are some book recommendations you can take. You're gonna get the slides, or you can take photos now. I read them all; they're really good. The Phoenix project is great if you're in an IT department and you want to learn how to transform. The systems thinking book is pretty big, complex tome for management on how to reorganize their organizations, but it's really still good. Another take on principles from Ray Dalio, the world's most successful hedge fund manager, and The Lean Enterprise is another good book that helps you understand how can you employ startup principles in an enterprise context. And with that, thank you very much, and I hope this was a useful talk to you. Thank you.